Welcome. This is Wendy Dietzler, Director of Education and Events for Trade Press Media Group. Thank you for joining today's FacilitiesNet webcast, Expert Insights, Closing the Skills Gap in Facilities Maintenance and Management, sponsored by Vector Solutions. Our panelists today are Scott Wollenzine, Joe Manalago, and Raj Shah. Scott is the Senior Director of Facility Planning and Operations at Northwestern Mutual, where he oversees a team of more than 90 professionals who operate and maintain NML's facilities, consisting of 3 campuses and over 3.5 million square feet of office space. Joe Manalago is a facilities manager for C&W Services. Joe's experience includes chemical manufacturing, facility management, and spearheading the training and development of C&W technicians who support the nationwide Toyota account. And finally, Raj Shah, Chief Product Officer for Vector Solutions, is with us today. Raj brings nearly 30 years of product, go-to-market, and strategy experience in B2B software to drive the product and content strategy at Vector Solutions. Welcome, gentlemen. Today's learning objectives include gaining insights from industry experts on the strategies and techniques they use to improve the performance of their facilities and close the skills gap in their organizations. Learning how to implement best practices in an organization to improve facility performance, increase efficiency, and reduce cost. That's a nice trifecta. And finally, identifying the latest tools, technologies, trends in facilities management, and how to apply them in the field. A couple more housekeeping announcements, and then we'll be underway. You heard earlier as you came into our virtual space, we welcome questions. We want to hear from you, so please get yours submitted by navigating to the bottom of the screen. You'll see a Q&A button, and you can enter your questions at any time. We'll take them at the latter part of today's event. Our event is also going to include 2 polling questions. And again, we really want your participation. So thank you in advance, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say there. And at the conclusion of today's webcast, we're going to send you an email. It's going to have a PDF copy of the slides you're seeing now, in addition to a link to an online assessment. Complete that, and we'll also send you some CEUs for your time. Today's webcast is going to be archived at facilitiesnet.com/webcasts, should you want to revisit. I think we're all set, so I'm going to pass it over to Raj to lead today's discussion.
Thank you, Wendy. Much appreciated. Good day, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. Whether you're an executive, manager, supervisor, or an individual contributor, you're facing a major skills gap, whether the folks that you have on board or the ones you're about to hire in the coming months and years ahead. So we're going to talk today about 4 different ways that you can address closing some of the skills gaps. And we're going to be joined by both Joe and Scott, who between them, as you can see, have decades of experience. I don't want to age you guys, but decades of experience in facility management at increasingly over larger and larger organizations. So they're going to have a really interesting view about large organizations, but also what does it mean for mid-sized and smaller organizations as well, because they've gone through the ranks, if you will. And we're going to leave plenty of time for Q&A, but also if you have questions as we're going to talk, I was joking with Scott and Joe that we're basically going to be 3 guys talking as if we're having a beer together. So ask questions along the way. We'll make sure to address them as we get through the conversation as well. What we do is just kind of set the stage for the conversation around skills gap, but just sharing some facts and figures with you, and then use that as a springboard to have the 4 big areas we wanted to talk to you all about. And we're going to do some polling to get your feedback as well as we go through the process. Next slide, please, Wendy. Oh, sorry, Paul. So let's start with some facts and figures to kind of set the stage for the skills gaps we're talking about here. In facility management, the employment growth is going to grow by 7% a year over the next decade or so, much faster than the general economy, which is all good. It's all great news, right? The employment is increasing because we have more and more facilities to manage, and the role and scope of the work is getting bigger and bigger. So it's all good news, but that means we need to attract and hire and retain lots more folks and give them the skills that they need to operate the facilities in a great way. At the same time, if you look at the far left, the average worker in facilities maintenance and management is 49 and a half years. And if you combine that with the fact that 75 million baby boomers and then my generation, the Gen X's, are going to be retiring over the next 10, 20 years, you're going to have a huge amount of skills that are going to walk away from our organizations. And how do you replace all that on the job, the training and the skills that they've had over these years? It's going to be a challenge. And as you look at incoming folks that are coming in, for example, there's only 25 accredited programs around the world that focus on FM. And so the future leaders are the ones that you're going to have to bring up through the organization. There aren't a huge pool of ready-made college grads that are coming in with the knowledge and the skills to run the facilities and the scope of the work y'all are doing. So you combine all of that and look at the center thing. 86% of you, 86% of facility maintenance facility managers are saying we have a gap here between the skills and the knowledge we need and what we have here with us. That's a huge number. I've never seen such a big gap develop in any sector that I've ever worked in or talked to. So this is where you, and you know all of this already, you're living it on a day-to-day basis, but this sort of sets the stage for why we're here, what we want to talk to you all about, and get your engagement around as well. I want to get started first with just Joe and Scott. Joe, just give us a little bit, both of you actually, to start with Joe, just a little bit more flavor for the work you do, the scope of the work that C&W does, and Scott, the same thing, Northwestern Mutual, a little bit about the company and the scope of the work they're doing, for example, Joe, with Toyota.
Sure. So C&W Services is a facility management company. I'm dedicated to the Toyota account. We oversee anything from office space, corporate office space, to distribution centers and logistics centers for Toyota nationwide and Puerto Rico, totaling just under 11 million square foot of facilities there.
And yeah, thank you, Raj, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm fortunate to be able to lead about 90 people and they're industry experts that map out all of the skilled trades areas. And we take care of, collectively, we take care of 3.5 million square feet of Class A office space, both here in Milwaukee, Franklin, which is a close suburb, as well as our New York campus. And so my team runs the gamut. They joke a lot. They say, we take care of everything from lightning to low voltage. And that's really true, because they take care of making sure that people are comfortable, safe, and productive when they walk into our facilities.
Joe and Scott, what do you think of the statistics I'm showing on the slide here? Are you all feeling this, or do you sense this, or tell us something about your perspective?
Yeah, great question, Raj. And yes, we're absolutely feeling what these numbers are bearing. In fact, I had 25% of our skilled trade staff retired a year and a half ago. And it took almost a little over a year to replace some of that knowledge. And it wasn't just the knowledge that left, but we had to then replace the knowledge as well with the legacy type situation with the buildings that we have here. And so it's not always that easy to find the skills that you're looking for on the street. And so a number of years ago, we instituted 2 new programs that have begin to give us some good traction in building from within, right? And we're going to get to that in a little later. But the idea here is, with our apprenticeship program, developing the skilled trades where we need it to be developed, and then also working with high schools, juniors and seniors in high schools, to help them make good quality career choices and a career path here in the skilled trades area.
Joe, in your sense on these statistics, do they ring true for you as well in your organization?
So similarly to Scott, we do see a lot of the younger generation coming into the industries. And I think that putting a large focus on training and developing the new age that's coming in, because obviously we are having a lot of skills that are walking out, is something that we really need to put a focus on. And again, just to kind of mimic Scott, C&W Services has also taken the approach of investing in the newer generation that's coming in. And again, I'm sure we'll get to that later on in the slides. But that's kind of at the forefront of everything is how do we get the people that are now coming into the trades up to where we need them to be? And can we do it fast enough and effectively enough to replace what we're losing at the same time?
Thank you. Yeah, there's sort of 2 strands. One is around the skilled trades and the entry-level techs, if you will. And it's also the other issue around leadership, your next generation of managers, your VPs, your director levels. Paul, go to the next slide if you don't mind. And one thing that's striking is just the scope of the work of a facilities leader spans so much, from finance to technology to leadership to operational maintenance, real estate management, project management, planning. it's just a huge scope of the work. So how do you build the next generation of leaders is also going to be important. We're going to talk about that as one of the 4 things we talk about is in terms of career pathing and building the next generation of leaders as well. I wanted to highlight, there's a great book by Michael Theriot on facilities and real estate management. You all should check it out. And we'll have all the links later on when we send you the PDF. But it's a really good book about the scope of the work that all of you have to do, especially in mid to larger organizations as well. Thoughts on that, Scott and Joe? Do y'all think actively about not just the skilled trades and the technicians, but also your managers, your leadership teams as well, and the scope? And is the scope, it feels to me like, it was like jack of all trades, master of none. Now you got to be jack of all trades and master of them all. So just how do you all do that? And how do you think about leadership, but yourself at the next level as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Raj, and one that I think one that's evolved over time, right? So we in facilities management, if I look over the course of my career over the last 25 years, we didn't always have a seat at the front table or with the executive level leadership. Whereas today, and because of the expertise that we bring to the table, we actually do have seats at the table, and organizations like ours, like yours, depend on that expertise in order to either save money or make things more efficient or more safe. But we're called upon as leaders to make sure that we have a breadth of information that we're able to call upon to inform our leadership, our senior leadership, and they're relying more and more heavily on us every day.
Yeah, Joe, how does it work at CW?
So you phrased it perfectly. I mean, a jack of all trades, and you're expected to be a master of everything. I mean, our daily day-to-day activities change, varying by the day. I mean, one day we will have a project that pops up, and one day we're handling a hot cold call. And building somebody from a technician level all the way up to a facility manager such as me, or a director as Scott, is something that we really need to look into. Me, myself, I actually started as a line technician at a bed frame company, just a couple of years ago, and then eventually, rose through the ranks to become a facility manager, and eventually hoping to target something like Scott as a director. Finding those individuals that have a passion for learning and that drive that's just instilled in somebody is key to forwarding that.
Yeah, I want to talk some more about leadership in the throughout this discussion, but let's go to the next slide, Paul, and let's talk about the technicians and the individual contributors. There's a ton of different hard skills and hard services and soft services you all have to provide, and I'm sure much of it you contract out. But even if you contract it out, you still got to own the quality, the delivery, the cost, the performance, etc. As you look at hiring new folks or onboarding contracts, etc. Talk to us a little bit more about just how is that working? What the folks you're hiring into, what kind of skill gaps you're seeing?
Yeah, that's really the key here is the skill gaps or the number of years of experience that are out on the street today doesn't equate with the number of years of experience that are ending up retiring and leaving. And so what we're finding is that the individuals that do bring in the skills, they may not be 100% or a little higher ranked in every one of these categories. So what we end up doing is on their first couple of days and weeks is we do a skills analysis, which we do in-house, whereby the new individuals, and we'll get to this in another slide, but we onboard them in a very rigorous type way. And at the same time, we're presenting them with a mentor who is actually doing a skills assessment. And so we can understand very quickly where they're really strong and where they have opportunities, and we'll focus on those areas where there are opportunities, right? And so in answer to your question is, people that we're finding on the street are good quality people. They just may not have every skill that we're looking for, and being able to then build from within is really critical and key to our operation.
Yeah. So let's, by the way, questions are already coming in, and some of the questions that we're going to actually get to in our conversation. So keep those questions coming. There's a ton of really good questions that I know both of these guys are going to answer for you all. So we'll get to that. Next slide, please, Paul. So now let's talk about what we're going to cover. That's sort of a more of a setup, but just sort of, we were going to talk about, we could talk literally about 20 different areas around building and retaining a skilled workforce and addressing the skills gaps. We figured, just given Joe's and Scott's really deep knowledge, focus on 3-4 key areas, just given we only have about an hour or so. First, we'll start with accelerated onboarding. How do we onboard the talent we hire on board? Then on-the-job training and cross-training, and then career planning and leadership. And then underneath all that, of course, just given the nature of the work we do around workplace safety is a really important part of it. So that's sort of the conversation we're going to have over the next 45 minutes or so. And let's start with accelerated onboarding. But we want to first get a sense of, from you guys, through a poll, how satisfied, next slide, please, how satisfied you all are with the skill level as you're bringing them into the organization. So if you all can just give us a quick answer to this question. How satisfied you are with the skill level of the new hires within your organization, and then we'll chat from there. I should have that Jeopardy musical tone on there. Do 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 do. All right. Interesting. So most of you, 64% of you are somewhat satisfied and 11% are not. So 75% are unsatisfied or somewhat satisfied with where that. Does that surprise you, Joe?
No, not at all. I mean, onboarding is something that kind of gets skipped over sometimes. You're trying to get somebody in, you're trying to replace a body that already left. And you know, you have your mandated stuff that comes from, you know, your HR and your corporate and your organizations, but how do you get that person in there and in that role with the correct knowledge in a timely, effective manner, right? And I think that one of the big gaps that we do is we're so worried about getting somebody out there to start doing the job, that are we actually equipping them with the correct tools to do the job? And when I say tools, I don't mean just wrenches and sockets, right? I mean, we need knowledge, we need all of that kind of stuff, you know, safety knowledge, the actual equipment knowledge of the facility. So like Scott, I mean, these campuses, you can get lost in them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, giving the people the correct tools in order to work effectively is important. And I think we skip over that.
Scott, your thoughts?
No, I would definitely agree with Joe. You know, we are anxious to make sure that they're onboarded from an HR and healthcare and all of those things correctly, and we want them to be as productive as quickly as possible, right? But it actually makes more sense to, at least we've found, it makes more sense to provide them with a mentor that can kind of walk them through their first weeks on campus, helping them, guiding them, answering their questions firsthand, versus just setting them and letting them go. So that's kind of been a practice that we've come accustomed to.
Yeah.
The trial by fire attitude kind of
right.
is the way I was thrown in, you know, years ago. And I think that's a way of the past that really needs to be turned around. So
yeah,
I agree.
And it seems like we all intuitively believe that a strong onboarding program, you know, makes a ton of sense. And we're going to have both Joe and Scott actually walk you through the programs they've built. But before we do that, I wanted to share a case study with you all. Next slide, Paul, please. This is, and again, we'll send you the links to the case study, et cetera. This is one of our actually Vector's customers, a very large FM. In fact, I think it's a competitor, Joe, to one of you, to your organization. But it's a huge organization, and they actually put in a structured, formal onboarding program. They were having huge issues with turnover, meaning 60% of the employees that they hired, 60% would turn over in their first year. They put in a fairly robust program with 6 big levers, if you will. And they were able to reduce the turnover to just 20% from 60% in that first year. And the 6 big things they did, I'm just going to high level talk through them, and you all can look at the case study later. Onboarding and training around skills, workplace safety and skills, internal tech certification program. So they actually had a certification program for their techs, a career advancement program, a skills assessment and coaching, like on the job skills assessment and coaching. They did some job training using federal grant money. And the fifth one, they started working much more closely with the HR team in finding the right folks to bring on board. So take a look at this case study. We'll ship it to you later, but those are some of the things that they've done to, and these are hard data in terms of how much they reduce the churn, which also has a dollar impact, right? If you're losing people, you're hiring people, spending time hiring them and retraining the new folks. So there's a lot of dollar impact to some of this work as well. So, all right, with that, let's go, Scott, to you first and talk about the onboarding program at Northwestern. Next slide.
So thank you for that. So we, like I mentioned earlier, we have a pretty robust onboarding program other than the HR side of the business and the healthcare and all of the ins and outs that people have to be concerned with. And that's a 2-day program in and of itself. So you can just imagine the amount of information that's being downloaded and drinking by fire that our new people have to do. So we kind of take that the next step then is when HR is finished with their programming, we actually bring the person on, we sit them down and have a discussion. And it's not just me, it's our leaders, it's even all the way up to our senior leadership, having discussions with the individuals and appreciating the fact that they're here. And some of their first weeks, days and weeks on site, we appoint a mentor to them. And so they begin to do exactly what Joe was mentioning earlier about learning the buildings. You know, where do I find this? Where do I find, you know, where's the lunch room? Those types of things. So really down to the basics. And aside from just learning the building, there's so much more in there as well in terms of making sure that they're comfortable with their surroundings. And we would like them to go home the same way they walk in the morning, and that's to be safe. And so you see there, safety is kind of my second group of columns there, and you can see all the different things that we make sure that we present to them and make sure that they're understanding. OSHA 30 has been set as our standard just in the last year. And so they not only get a well-rounded version of what OSHA requires, but then also is more building and site specific, which you can kind of tell there with confined space training, fall protection, which is different for every facility that you go into. And then of course, you know, for the next second week, third week, there's ongoing mentor check-ins, learning all the different systems, right? A lot of different applications and computer systems, not just to record the time that you're here, but also to record and take a look at building controls and things of that nature. So the fire system, and everybody that is in facilities management knows how unique those fire systems are to the buildings. Making sure that they're aware of where the backflows are, where the shutoffs are, as well as, you know, the controls training, both on a Metasys and EBI side of the house as well. So this is done over a period of, as you can see there, a number of weeks. And as the weeks go on, you know, the mentors wean them off, I guess you could say, but are always there in the background, making sure that they're able to ask questions and are comfortable doing what they're doing. The last thing we want them to do is make a mistake or fail, because everybody does rely on our facility so heavily in order to get their outside work done day in and day out. And we want to make sure they're safe doing it.
Joe, on the next slide, can you talk through also your program? It's in many ways similar in terms of its structure, sounds like, but can you comment a little more about that?
It really is. I mean, they are really similar. Kudos to Scott, and I know I'm going to say this to him later, but for mandating or making OSHA 30 your standard there. So here we use OSHA 10 for all of our technicians and OSHA 30 for the managers. But everybody goes through the arc flash safety, lockout, tagout, all of that. For instance, we just hired a technician 2 weeks ago. He's on a night shift and he still has yet to work his night shift. This is his going on his third week because he is with, as Scott said, a mentor. We're pairing him up. We call him with your buddy, right? Your buddy system. We work on a buddy system, and he is still yet to see his shift because he's still shadowing somebody that's showing him everything. And I think that's something that really needs to happen more often, because especially with a night shift guy, everybody's having to kind of make sacrifices for the team to shift their schedules to cover that empty slot. But at the same time, everybody understands the more that we have him in training for this whole month, it's going to benefit everybody else, right? Because he's going to be up to speed on everything. And then kind of moving into the miscellaneous stuff, I really should have put Vector Solutions here because we actually do use Vector for all of our technician and safety training as well. We just added a professional development catalog there too for elective courses for everybody to take. But again, I mean, we can go on about safety and training forever, but I mean, it does closely mimic what Scott's doing over there. So.
Hey, so 2 questions, guys. Y'all run pretty large, mature organization, very well structured. This is amazing, the structure and the thought you've got into it. If I'm like in many of our folks that are on the listening in, if I'm a mid-size or a small organization, what advice do you have for a mid-size or smaller organization that may not have this sort of, large company organizational structure like y'all have? Just what would you say to them? Like, how should they prioritize things? How should they think about this onboarding?
Yeah, I think if you're a small organization, you obviously don't have the number of people that you would otherwise have in a medium or larger organization. And sometimes, because of the way the economy is and so forth, you may not have large numbers of team members in big companies either because it gets outsourced. But all in all, the ideas and the principles that we just shared are very similar. Whether it's a small team or a large teams, many of these safety principles that you see on your screen would still apply. And I think the other thing that you have to remember that I make sure that our team is very familiar with is that when people, whether you're outsourcing or not, there's always going to be pieces of the organization like window washing and things of that nature that is very high risk that we would typically outsource to people. And as employees are working and moving throughout the building, it doesn't matter if they have a Brightview suit on or they have a Northwestern Mutual suit on. The idea that you're interacting with facilities, it's all in the light of Northwestern Mutual. What are they doing and how are they interacting with their people and how safe are they being? And so I make sure that that's kind of first and foremost. That even if you have a large outsource type team perspective, all of these principles still really apply.
Gotcha. Another question, maybe Joe, you can pick up on this one. How it seems like you have to work fairly closely with HR. Tell me more about how you as the facilities leader work with the HR team around the onboarding. What does that partnership look like?
So for us, we have an HR liaison that's dedicated to our region. So that person is dedicated to us. We have that direct line. We can call them, email them, text them anytime. Generally they answer, rather quickly because HR matters aren't always things you can sit on. But when it comes to onboarding, we actually sit them down for the first 3 days. We have an HR person on site that comes, and for the first 3 days, that's all they're doing is sitting there and having that good relationship with that HR person and that open communication, so that we can say, hey, we have a new employee starting next Monday, which I would get in trouble because that's short notice, but just say next Monday, so that they can be on site with their onboarding packet and all of that. That's kind of how we do it here. Just having that open communication, that dialogue, and just dedication to getting that stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about, and we could talk about onboarding for a long time, but let's keep moving to the second topic, which is about on-the-job training. Formal training, that first few weeks, et cetera, the formalized training is only about 10%. The other 90% is how you interact with your coworkers, and it's all the on-the-job experience and all that. Can maybe start with Joe this time. Tell us how y'all think from a CNW point of view about on-the-job training. How do you do that? How do you execute on that? Is it formalized, mentored, all that? Just walk us through in a minute or two just how you all do it, and then Scott after that.
So on the job training specifically, and I'm gonna toot your horn a little bit for Vector, right? We employed Vector last year, and what we did is we assigned a qualification of 85 courses. And then we said, hey guys, take these any way you want and in any order you want. and it offers a nice little red-green report, which tells you, hey, this course is completed or this course has not been completed. And what we noticed, and I'm going to use one specific technician as an example here, there's a calibrations technician, and all he handles in this facility is ASTM certified, calibrations for tools. That's all he's doing. But what we noticed is he's gravitating towards all of these HVAC courses, and he's taken approximately 15 of these courses whenever I raised that flag. So I got together with him and his supervisor and said, hey, tell me why you're interested in this. Why are you interested in this? It has nothing to do with your job role whatsoever. And his reasoning was really sound. It was, hey, HVAC is never going anywhere. This is something I've always been interested in. I never really knew how to get into the training. So what we did is we said, okay, if this is where you want to go, we're not trying to stick you in this calibrations role forever. If you want to progress to something else, then let's see what we can do. So we assigned the technician all HVAC courses and the EPA certification pre-test 1, 2, and 3. That technician completed all the courses and then went on to get his EPA certification. So I think recognizing the people in where they want to go rather than where we need them is essential, because it's hard to put a price on going to a job you don't hate or doing something you don't resent doing. So identifying those people and where they want to be and building them is key to here.
That's fascinating. Yeah. I always thought about, you got to give them a strict line of courseware to get going and get started. But what you're doing is opening up their own sense of curiosity and leading the path for them to lead, and then and making a win-win out of it. That's fascinating, Joe. Scott, how do you all handle on the job training and then just cross training in general?
Yeah, so what Joe just mentioned rings really true and very similar to what we're all about as well. So there's nothing worse than coming to work today and hate what you're doing. Not only that, but if you're hating what you're doing, you're probably not paying attention like you ought to be, and you may not be working as safe as you want to be either. But really, we're developing people for the long term. We're hoping that you have a long career here when you join Northwestern Mutual, and in particular our team. And so we too use the Vector instruments and the training classes. If you recall, I mentioned the skills analysis that earlier on in our discussion today, and really understanding where is the person who's coming in, where is his strong skills, and where does he or she have opportunities. And so we utilized Vector very heavily in the safety realm, as well as very recently here in the HVAC realm as well. So they've got a great book of themed classes there, and we found it to be very helpful. In addition to that, though, we also promote the fact that sending people back either to seminars, or we have a state-run Milwaukee area technical college where we will also sponsor their classes and books and things like that if they should choose to go back to school and hone their skills in a particular course matter. So a little bit different and a little bit more expanded. And we also offer that to the interns that we have from high school, should they want to start learning about a particular skill early on.
Hey, so guys, two good questions that have come in that are specifically relevant to this. One question is, what is your approach to reaching out to high schools for recruiting and potential talent? You just talked about the MATC, so, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but if you can just, Scott, help with that, and Joe, if you all do anything on the high school level as well.
Yeah. So MATC is just a Milwaukee Area Technical College. They're the state-run indentured apprenticeship program is run through them. And so we have had a number of graduates this year who have taken the apprenticeship program in both the electrical and in the HVAC fields that have just graduated. And then what we also started last year, and an area that I'm pretty proud of, is we have to keep the pipeline of talent full. And that's how I basically talk about it. And in order to do that, because of the shortening of finding skilled trades, people who have the skill already on the street, is to build from within. And teaming up with several local high schools here in the city of Milwaukee, we talked to juniors and seniors from several of the high schools and talked to them about their careers. And so we also bring them in then and give them a day's worth of experience and show them around about what it means to be in the skilled trades, with actually a little bit of hands-on in each one of the skilled trades area, the HVAC, electrical, building automation, carpentry, painting, and so forth. And that maybe gets them to start thinking about, well, I had planned always to go to college, but maybe this is a different route. And so whether they choose the skilled trades or whether they don't choose the skilled trades, it's still a win-win no matter what, because they've learned something that they may not have otherwise knew about before. So we utilize both of those programs very heavily.
And Joe, do y'all look at more technical colleges, community colleges, and colleges, or do you also have a high school kind of program?
So yeah, so when we do our apprenticeship programs, which I think we'll get to later, right,
Oh,
Raj?
sure. Yeah.
So we actually just partner with the community colleges for that portion. We get all of our candidates just from, coming in from LinkedIn, and we have a specialized center inside of CNW that focuses on apprenticeships and pushing those out. Unfortunately, I can't say that we have partnered or have been into any high schools, but that's an awesome idea, and maybe we can all learn something from this, including myself, and maybe try to drive something like that in Scott's fashion.
Yeah. Well, I have a son, and I've been like pushing him, like, you should consider the trades, especially electrical or something like that, or security. And it's a hard sell, unfortunately, but like, because everyone's thinking college, but like, they can't take that job to China or anything else. They're going to need electricians for the next 50, 100 years. And I just wish we as a country did a better job of really talking about a great value of a career in the trades can be. It's such an underappreciated, profession. I feel like we just don't do a great enough marketing job as a country, I think.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
What we've learned, Raj, here at Northwestern Mutual is that, working with the City Milwaukee kids, oftentimes they don't know what they don't know, even for myself, right? And unless you bring them in and explain something to them and actually let them touch and feel it, will they get a better understanding about what it means? So that's been where we've seen some success.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You can't pursue what you don't know, right? Just kind of like your HVAC, the guy who wanted to go after HVAC, he probably didn't know it until he got exposed to it. Really cool. All right, let's move to the next area, third area around career pathing. And there's a lot of actually great questions that are coming around this concept as well. And the basic idea here is putting a really good career path in place. It's shown that internal hires have a more likelihood of being successful than bringing somebody from the outside. So putting a really good career path for both technicians, individual contributors, but also your future supervisors and managers and directors and VPs is a really good way to drive the skills and address the skills. So we both, Joe and Scott, if you can start, I think with Scott first on the next slide. Can you talk us through how y'all think about career pathing at Northwestern?
Sure, and that's a really good topic as well. One of the things that we've discovered over the course of time is just hiring somebody into a role and not really giving them a pathway forward. And whether it's a him or her or the team member, if they have a path forward, it gives them a better sense of where am I headed. It gives them a sense of direction, if you will. And so the last thing we want to do is lose people once we put all that time and effort into the training and the onboarding and all the things we've talked about here leading up to this. So we've laid it out both at the starting right away with high school, all the way to being well seasoned in your role, and how to move beyond that should you choose to, right? So it's, you kind of see the step-by-step program. We've got framework here, but the high schools could, if they're interested, turn into a youth apprenticeship program. The youth apprenticeship program allows you, if you choose to start earning hours against the indentured apprenticeship program, both on the electrical, in the building automation and HVAC sides. So that's something new for us just in the last year. And then, of course, you can move on to your becoming a journey worker and then a team leader in your particular trade, should you choose to go that far and get into leadership. Otherwise, there are still options for you that you can become a project manager, or you can become a facility manager like Joe and I am, Or if you want to go beyond that, there's even beyond that to the assistant director and director levels, and even up to a vice president if you're working your way all the way up throughout the ranks. So the important part about this slide and about this framework is to let the individual know that they've got choices and they've got optionality, and that they could stay here for their career should they choose to.
Joe, your thoughts? Similar kind of an approach at CW?
Yeah, so I mean, just like Scott said, we run, or me personally, I take the apprenticeships, you know, a little bit close to heart, and that's because I did come from a regular maintenance line worker and work my way kind of through the ranks, if you will. So we run a wide range of apprenticeship programs. I've specifically ran 3 HVAC apprenticeship programs here that we've partnered with local colleges, the community colleges here, a few colleges, and it's a associate's degree program that we have that we build them up. So when they come out of the program, they already have an associate's degree in their related field, and they can proceed forward from there. This year we did something a little bit different because we all preach about how important safety is and how we want to go home the same way we came in. So we're kind of putting our money where our mouth is there, and we've actually opened up a safety apprentice role. And that's one of the things that I've had a lot of questions. How do you even get into the safety, you know, role? How do you get into this? Like, where is this at? You know, how do you become a safety guy? How do you become that guy that just walks around and tells us we're doing everything wrong? So we opened up that safety apprentice role inside of the organization this year as well.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's interesting because I've never heard it. It almost feels like y'all are like the NBA, and you're doing your recruiting at the college level, but also at the high school level to bring the talent into your thing, because that's your input pipeline. So and you have the ability to go do that. A question from one of the folks listening in, Jeff. It says, so I'm 24, worked in the oil industry for 1 year, and then became a building engineer. I don't have any trade certifications, and I'm working on my degree. What should I really focus on in the next 5 years? So he's worked for a year in the oil industry, became a building engineer, doesn't have any certifications, and he is working towards a degree. So is he on the right track? What else could he be doing? How does he connect to folks like Scott, you, and Joe?
I mean, my question would be, I mean, and I don't know if we can ask questions and you can respond very quickly, but what would be his degree career path, right? What is he going for? But what he could immediately start doing is getting into the skilled trade. I mean, if your site has a licensed electrician for your state, get in with him, start your apprenticeship. You can start working for him and getting your hours right there. Just ask your
start
HVAC
specializing, basically from a building engineer, go into one of the more technical trades, I think what you're suggesting. I think is okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And by the way, just again, I don't want to bring up my son again, but he lives in Chicago. I'm like, the IBW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, have an amazing mentorship program. You start as a journeyman, you get paid like good money, and every 6 months you get more money, and you're working for 5 years up the trade, and you become a master electrician in like 5-6 years. Like, there's some amazing things out there for people to look into, and there's nothing to lose. You just go apply and try to get into some of those programs. Scott, your thoughts on what he should think about is from a building engineer to the next level of growth for him?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Joe. The hardest thing is giving it a start, right? And if you're anything like me, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was back in high school. So I tried a lot of different things until I kind of landed where my interests lie. And so I know that the interns and the apprentices that we've worked with over the course of the last few years, there are probably over half of them that started a certain way and ended up in a different direction. And that's okay, because you don't know what your strengths are until you start trying these things out and having some hands-on and experience with it. But I think the point that was made earlier, Joe, to your point about reaching out to an already existing journey worker in the field that you think you might have an interest in, go and reach out to that person and see if you can maybe spend a day or two working with them initially. And, but you first got to ask the question and make it known that you're interested.
Yeah. Just one final question on this area, then we'll move on. If you're a smaller or mid-sized organization, you don't really have this kind of a career pathing structure in place. This is a great template, by the way, to get started. But what advice would you have for a mid-sized company, let's say, or organization that's thinking about this? And by the way, in our audience, I think that we have folks from the government, we've got folks from industry, we've got folks from higher ed. So we've got a very broad swath of facilities leadership that's on the call. So what advice do you have for folks that may not have something this structured and well thought through? By the way, beyond stealing what these slides and working off of it, we always joke.
Definitely take the framework. That's why we put it together.
2 points for original thoughts, 3 points for copying.
So I didn't always work for a large organization. I kind of worked my way up in the facilities area. And I think the first company I had 100 people in it way back in the day, but I think the principles are the same. And so I think as you work through a small company, like I mentioned earlier, you still have similar things to think about in running your facility. But you're probably going to be that person that wears many different hats, just like that pinwheel that we saw earlier. You're going to be that person that's going to be the expert in many different areas, including safety, including management, including projects, right? Project management, and all the rest. And the better educated you can become on those things, the more beneficial, if I can use that, the more beneficial it will be to you and to your organization, showing those strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I know we're going to be running soon on time. We're going to get to some of the more additional questions. So let's move to the final fourth topic, which is, and you guys have already talked about this quite a bit already, safety, workplace safety, whether it's for your own employees, the contractors, or for the people you're housing, facilities, and all the thousands of people. And if, Joe, like you came from the chemical world before that, if something goes wrong, it's not just the immediate facility or the plant, it's the entire community around you that could matter. Some quick statistics. Fatal work injuries are actually going up. In 2021, it went over 5,000 deaths in the US, which is a 9% increase, which was a bit of a surprise because over the years, it's been trending down nicely. So how are y'all thinking about workplace safety, both for your own folks as well as for the overall community that you support, especially in light of COVID?
Go ahead, Joe.
So, I mean, I think that this is really just addressed by creating that culture. I mean, I don't want to be the one that's going to make the call to somebody's significant other or family and tell them that something's happened, right? So you're walking in, and from the first, every Monday we have a safety topic that's sent out, right? And it's sent out to the entire organization. Every Wednesday we have a safety meeting with all of our team, and we start out the meeting with safety tips. Every technician and everybody on the call, including myself, has to come up with a safety tip from the previous week and announce it. And we have to come up with a good catch. I was walking by a wall and noticed a little bit of a sharp edge on the corner cover, and we took care of that. So I think it's just bringing that awareness that something so small can potentially be dangerous, and ingraining that culture and opening the eyes of everyone that it's not only you, but the person that's next to you that it's going to affect if you just walk by that corner cover that has that little excuse me, that jagged edge on it, because now he may be injured. So it's just that culture, ingraining that culture daily. That's a really good repetitive
point. Yeah. Scott?
No, that's a great point, Joe. And we call it a little bit different. We call it toolbox talks. But there again, it's the teams day in and day out, kind of reaffirming and keeping it top of mind. Our safety director will also go down and do walkarounds and talk to the individuals. They'll also be here for the safety team will also be here for special events, such as we just got this past weekend of doing a complete electrical shutdown of the facilities and making sure that we're vacuuming and cleaning and everything is tuned properly. Because what I mentioned before is, you came in a certain way, we want you to go home in exactly, if not a better way, so that you can come back tomorrow. And that's so important. But to keep it top of mind by having those practices will go a long way with your employees.
Absolutely. Hey, I know we're going to be running out of time shortly, so let's keep moving to the next slide, Paul. So what we talked about, folks, is sort of 4 ways to close the skills gap. So we talked about onboarding, we talked about on-the-job training and coaching, we talked about career pathing, we talked about workplace safety. We want to hear from you. What are as we talk about these 4 areas, what are the most biggest challenges that you face amongst these 4? So we'll go deeper dive into that over the next 8 to 10 minutes as well, while we answer some of your Q&A as well. So if you can answer, like, what are of these 4 areas, which are the most challenging for you? And while the folks are doing that, let me tee up one of the questions. Sheikh asked, how can we measure workplace performance in maintenance jobs like carpentry and plumbing, etc.? How do y'all think about like assessing workforce performance for some of the trades?
Well, one of the things that that Northwestern Mutual does is we have we use the system by the name of Archibus, and that's our asset tracking system. And on that system, you can also put in service calls. So you have on-demand type calls where you need to bring in those specialty trades. So one of the metrics that we use is not only how many of the calls came in, but how quickly were they closed and how satisfactorily were they closed, right? So a couple of metrics there. As far as PMs go, very quickly, we have over 15,000 assets that we maintain, and we want to make sure that as those PMs are happening, that the things are being addressed in a timely way. So how many of those PMs are left in a month's time? How many PMs are 3 days old or older? Are also a couple of key metrics that we use. Joe?
So similar to what Scott has, we have a different system, but we're able to have those on-demand reports where we can see if there's repetitious calls for breakdowns or anything of that nature. But what I really want to say is even on the PMs and the reactive work orders that we do on any equipment, we have an audit. So we have a certain percentile of everything that a maintenance technician touches gets audited, and it gets audited by an SME in that field. It's not audited by an auditor that just sits behind a computer, and they go through the job plan or the details of that work order, and they audit these work orders, and then they assign a score to that. And then from that score, it's either, deemed good, or, hey, we raised that flag, and then we follow up and see. I mean, that's kind of the way we approach it here.
Very cool. Thank you, Joe and Scott. Oh, so here's the results from the biggest challenges. So clearly, on-the-job training, cross-training, and building leadership skills are the biggest challenges that our audience is facing. Maybe can we go a little deeper on the cross-training and on-the-job training? Just your thoughts on how you're doing. Do you have a specific mentor coaching program for and then do you have cross-training specifically? You've structured it so that people do rotate into different jobs. Can you talk a little bit more about cross-training and OGT?
So here, we have everybody in the department. We have an electrician's department, an HVAC department, but whenever we assign the vector training for the cross training and the on-the-job training, the electricians don't just get electrician work, right? I mean, training, excuse me, they get HVAC work. So we try to build that team where there is a silo, where there's a job description, but also it's wide enough that electricians can still answer HVAC work orders. It's a team. We don't silo our teams. We have that communication. I think that having those safety meetings weekly with everybody in a room actually builds the team a little bit closer, and just communication. So.
And Scott, maybe pick up on the leadership is the other big challenge in terms of how you're developing next generation of FM leaders.
Well, and we do similarly, we do cross training as well, both at the skilled trade level as well as at the leadership level. In fact, we just have gone through kind of a structural change, but we try to give our leadership experiences and a variety of experiences and challenges throughout the years. So we're fortunate enough here at Northwestern Mutual to have a variety of different projects that come up in a given time, whether that be in large scale construction projects or smaller scale software implementations and things like that, as well as just working in close collaboration and mentoring programs here at Northwestern Mutual with the leadership and myself. We also have employee resource groups, and to get more of a business acumen with the business of insurance sales and productivity out in the insurance area. We constantly promote, let's go out into the field, let's go have lunch with one of these individuals and learn a little bit more about what they do. They can learn a little bit more about what you do. And outside perspective, outside of the facilities arena, is so very important in order to really understand what the business, what the significance of the business is.
Sounds good. Hey, turning to some of the Q&A questions, where, in the climate positions, Scott, you went through, where is the technician in the climate positions in that?
The technical group is its own group here at Northwestern Mutual, and they work very closely with the electricians and HVAC teams. They're there doing the troubleshooting and so on and so forth. So they too have an apprenticeship program called Building Technicians and Controls, I believe it's called. And they have to put in so many hours and they have to put in so many classes, just as an HVAC or electrical representative. So
yeah, that's good. Question from the audience: is a PMP certification needed to become an FM or PM?
Want to take that one?
Well, I'm going to say, because I don't have it, so I'm going to say no. So the only certification that I have that wasn't listed here is actually I'm about to do my IFMA CFM. So, but I would say no, because I don't have one and I'm a facility manager. But it is good to have. It is good to have.
Okay. A question: what is it? Oh, this for I think. What is the sample size of these surveys? So the surveys we're doing live are all the folks that are here. It's over 200 people that are responding back. Again, from a wide range of sectors, organizations, et cetera, as well. Question: we struggle with leadership development, the concept of buddy to boss, workers who want promotions, higher pay, but fear dealing with requirements of leadership, such as subordinate performance managers, subordinate performance management, et cetera. Any suggestions for overcoming this challenge? Like, they want to get there, but they don't want to have to deal with some of the more challenging parts of the job, which is performance management. How do you deal with that? How did you do that as you rose in your careers?
Yeah, well, there's always going to be those parts and pieces that aren't necessarily your cup of tea, but over the course of time and how I've addressed that with my own work is to really lean into some of that work that you don't like, because there's likely to be something about it that you learn about that you can use to your advantage, taking that next step in your career. And my grandfather always used to tell me that sometimes the things you like the least are what's really the best. Yeah. And so that has held true in a number of different roles I've had throughout my career.
Very cool. Really quick answer. Do you do water audits, and how often? I'm not even sure what a water audit is personally, but you'll probably know all that.
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I don't really, I was just going to say, I was going to ask if Scott knew what a water audit is. Maybe I know it by something different. Is it a water quality audit, or are we auditing like the hardness and softness and the pH of it? I'm not really sure how to answer that, Scott.
Gotcha.
Understand what it is?
So, when we had the pandemic going on and the building sat vacant, or less, I should just answer for myself, my building sat vacant, that water stagnates in those pipes. And so knowing that, we went through a very proactive flushing system, and we brought in a third party to test about 20 different locations in each facility, making sure that the bubblers, the restaurant, all the different potable water solutions were safe of any type of bacteria or fungus. And so we even treated our oldest facility with a chlorine type treatment to really get it flushed out. It's our 100-year-old building next door. So those third-party testing is something that we've done at least annually. And if you run into a possible situation, or if you get asked by one of your employees, hey, what is it? You may have to do it more often, but at least annually.
Oh, interesting. Very cool. Hey, I know we're running out of time. We respect everyone's time here. So let's thank you again. Let's go on to the next slide. Tons of great questions. Thank you all. I wish we had another hour to answer all your questions. Literally dozens of questions. I know we're wrapping up, but all the resources we talked about in the deck so far, all the case studies, the research paper, the articles and all that, it's all here. When you get this PDF, you'll have the links to them. Many times, many of you may be asking for additional investments or additional resources and new hires to make. You'll want to have a case to build on. And some of these resources, if they can be helpful, please use them, including Joe and Scott's slides as well. 2 points for original thought, 3 points for photocopying, I always say. Next slide, please. Also from a vector perspective, thank you guys for talking about, I wasn't expecting you all to talk about vector, but we do have a huge library. We do e-learning and training, and we have a huge library of courses specifically focused on FM. And if y'all want to give it a try, I think we've got our top 10 most popular courses. You can go play with them and check them out. So we'll send that to you as part of the link as well. And of course, I'm biased, but check it out. Again, I want to thank you guys, Joe and Scott, for making this an amazing, the experience you all have at the level of water audits all the way up to leadership is just amazing. And so thank you so much for your insights and perspectives. And I also want to thank everybody in the audience. You're like a silent army in my view. Like if it goes right, no one notices, but if it goes wrong, everybody notices. And the work you do is super important. It keeps everybody safe and frankly, keeps America running 24/7 is the best way I can describe what y'all do. You keep us running. So thank you all for all the great hard work you do. I know it's sometimes not recognized, but I do recognize it. We all recognize it. And again, thank you so much. And thank you, Scott. Thank you, Joe. And pass it back to Wendy.
Thank you so much, Raj. And I'm just going to echo what you just said. I sleep a little better at night knowing folks like Joe and Scott are helming the leadership and the development of the next generation of the people who are going to be stewards of our facilities. So essential. So thank you. And Raj, thank you for keeping the conversation flowing. I think the virtual beer worked well. I think we should all do this again.
Scott's in Milwaukee and I love beer. So Scott, I want an invite, man.
All right.
That's the Holy Land. And I just wanted to
Joe's
say,
coming too.
one of the questions that came up a lot was, where can I hear this again? Everybody should know we are going to archive this webcast at facilitiesnet.com/webcasts. Give us a few days. We're just going to spruce up our video a little bit, but we'll get it out there for you. In addition, that email that Raj mentioned will have the slide deck. It will have links to CEU questions so you can obtain your certificate as well. Those are two big questions. Those I can answer. Joe, Scott, you guys took the tough one. So thanks for that. It really has been an enlightening hour. And we would like to really thank Vector Solutions for the sponsorship and the support of today's event. This kind of conversation needs to happen as often as possible. So to everybody else, thank you for your time, your attention. And with that, I'll say have a great rest of your day. We'll conclude today's webcast.
Bye, folks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.